Good evening. Welcome to Live from Prairie Lights. I'm Lindsay Park. Tonight I'm pleased to present poets Jennifer Knox and Johannes Göransson. Jennifer Knox will read from her new book, Days of Shame and Failure. Sarah Manguso says, Jennifer Knox is one of our funniest writers, but what places her work in a realm of its own is the empathy that surrounds, contradicts, and occasionally undermines the joke, sending us far beyond the punchline. Days of Shame and Failure is the work of a genius at her peak, the best book yet from one of our most brilliant and sui generis American writers. Jennifer Knox's poems have appeared 4 times in the Best American Poetry Series, as well as the anthologies Great American Prose Poems from Poe to Present and Best American Erotic Poems. Her previous books are A Gringo Like Me, Drunk by Noon, The Mystery of the Hidden Driveway. Knox received her BA from the University of Iowa and her MFA in poetry writing from New York University. She has taught poetry writing at Hunter College and New York University and currently teaches at Iowa State University. Writers Workshop graduate Johannes Göransson will read from The Sugar Book, published by Tarpaulin Sky Press. Publishers Weekly says, fans of Göransson's distorted poetics will find this a productive addition to his body of work. And Jeffrey Cruikshank Hagenbuckle of Fanzine says, the Sugar Book sends its message like a mail train. Visceral surrealism. His endgame is an exit wound. Göransson is the author of Haute Surveillance and Entrance to a Colonial Pageant in which we all begin to intricate. A new quarantine will take my place, dear Ra, pilot. Quote, Johann the Carousel Horse, unquote. And several books in translation, including Dark Matter and With Deer by Esse Berg, Ideals Clearance by Henry Partland, and Colobert Orbital by Johan Jensen. With his wife, poet Joyelle McSweeney, he co-edits action books. He teaches at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. Please welcome Jennifer Knox and Johannes Göransson.
Thank you. I'm sorry about all the names. That was a real workout. So what we thought we were going to do is we'll just read a few poems, maybe like 2 poems, and then we'll switch off like tag team. Right? Tag team. So I'm going to read from The Sugar Book. I was really impressed that you were in the Best Erotic Fiction. This was chosen as the worst erotic fiction.
I could be in that too.
It's kind of a novel, but it has a kind of narrative, but it's not that important. Some guys in Los Angeles, mostly. He's got a wife, kids, and a son he locks up in a room. This poem is called Burn the Whole Thing Down. Los Angeles tastes like iron in my mouth, and I blame my daughters. For I'm feverish and they stand on the stairs and stare. They have soiled mouths and blue eyes. They're beautiful, but disgusting, because they break the shells and carry sunflowers, thousands of sunflowers. A daughter brings the inside outside, and the outside inside. A wife sits on the sofa, in the dark, with mercury in her. I love my wife because of the side effects. I love my wife because the film has been poisoned, and she sealed it with a kiss. And she brings me tiny flowers with erect flower stalks and large seeds. She might die in the movie. Have you ever fallen in love while the city burns? Then don't tell me I'm a sexist. I'm writing a book, and I love the plastic chairs in which I sit. I'm buying them with spit. And this is called The Meadow. We live in the meadow, but it's a hotel. We pay for it. We call it the Meadow on account of the lamb masks and because of the sweet-smelling girl bodies on the sidewalk, because of my own tendency to affect the air of a shepherd. Even during time of plague-like symptoms, I get murdered by the killer of little shepherds. Even during a time of war that piles up bodies in sublime numbers, I play the flute. Die, sunflowers, die. The faces are somewhat disarticulated due to rat activity. according to the cops who study such things to solve murders. For example, the murder of a starlet who shot videos of me at a shooting gallery. That's me, with the smeared fruit, doing that thing with doll mouths. We're making history. We're using fucked up military time while the riots expire. Look how many bodies we can pile up. It's the national debt.
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I just listened to Johannes, and then I picked two poems that I thought will go with it. I've never read from this book before. This is called Drones. Friends, we're living in a golden, fleeting moment wherein rich people are buying very expensive toys that fly higher than airplanes and can land anywhere, on your fire escape, in your yard, and photograph you through curtains with a surveillance camera, record things you're saying with a high-powered microphone. Scientists originally built the toy to murder people in other countries, and now rich people in this country want to buy them. Why? I have absolutely no idea, but I can't wait to kill one. Shoot it with a shotgun, shoot it with a hose, wing it with rocks, pick the wings off, light it on fire, and stomp the plastic bits to splinters. Rich people will be outraged that their toys are being destroyed. Then lobbyists will make destroying the toys illegal, so we must move fast. The cleverest of us already are, down in our basements, under the gun. This is called Radical Honesty Night. It's a conversation between two people. I have to give up drinking entirely or just be drunk all the time, Margie said. Have you ever read The Myth of Monogamy? Here, Douglas handed her a copy he had apparently been sitting on all night. I'm having an affair, and no, I don't want to talk about it. My sexual fantasies are all about pony play, and I don't appear in any of them. There's another excellent reason to read that book, hon, Douglas said and lit his pipe. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Margie asked. Nothing that I'm aware of, Douglas said, but then changed his mind. You think sheep, when they're being sheared, would thrash around, right? Well, it turns out they just sit there like lumps, staring straight at the camera. That's what they did in the documentary I watched last night about sheep shearing. Last night? Yeah, when I told you I was out changing the oil, I was really at a herding bar watching documentaries about sheep. Maybe we can work this into our sex life, Margie suggested. No, because when I fantasize about sheep, it's about a specific sheep named Drummond, and I'm standing right next to him and he's looking at me right in the eyes. Margie shuddered. You're right, it wouldn't work. She pulled back the curtain and looked out of the living room window into the dark. Doug's cherry tobacco smelled like a dying sun. I think I'm afraid of my own success, she said. Duh, he said and gestured broadly.
That must be the one that was in the Best Erotica. My wife tells me to lie still. Lie still, she shouts. My wife wants to wear a snow-colored necklace when she puts me back together again, but she also wants to read to me from her book of atrocity fashion. The sperm is dribbling out of her cunt. I want to read Merchant of Venice for the meat imagery. I want to be a writing instructor for meat imagery. My wife tells me about a book she's read in which a distant planet makes every man's dreams come true. I say, wow, that's beautiful. But she says, no, it's horrible. Lots of pitter-patter of little children. Apparently one character keeps killing his wife. Apparently she asks, why do you want to get rid of me? She wasn't a virgin, I think. Media makes duplicates. The planet was maybe media, maybe a stand-in for Los Angeles, which is a stand-in for cunts. My wife's cunt is dripping sperm on the floor as she walks to the window. She'll play Eva Braun in my next picture show. My next picture show will also feature scuffed mannequins and rotten oranges because my daughters carry them into the house to attract butterflies. Butterflies swarm around my sore and my wife's cunt. The enemy is a fake because he makes copies. He'll kill himself on television. My wife tells me that the road to joy is littered with corpses. I think they have sperm on them. She thinks they have X's on them. A lot of these are like homages to Emily Dickinson. So this one is called Safe in... It's true. Safe in My Chambers of Alabaster. Surveillance cameras make it hard to see what Sarah is doing to her crotch. We're dying, but we can't find any evidence. Every time I make an image of myself, an angel dies. I'm shivering cold because I feel too much. For example, about my wife who has tits in Los Angeles. My son asks me about a girl who shivers and doesn't have eyes. So I leave him and I go to a media museum. The topic is virgin violence. I pretend to know my way around. I pretend to translate images into words, but there's one thing I've learned about translation. It's all about corpses. Dig me up in 100 years and I'll tell you about the children dying outside my window. How they smelled like rotten fruit. So what? Tonight, whores are gonna sew in my dolls. There's a worm in my hand and it's small and white. It comes from the flowering some horse gave me last night while I was walking home with my white face and my shaking hands. The Media Museum smells bad. It reminds me of the horse gowns and how they burned. My son is frantically beating on the wall. He's scared horse will burn the house down. They won't, whore boy.
This is about Phil Spector. Crazy hairdo, crazier head. Spector pinned down twins LaFlora and LaFauna like butterflies, trimmed their teeth, and ran them into an unlit corner of the ring on sold-out pay-per-view. Someone said, "Hell no," cue laugh track, and called the cops. "Sorry, my nieces are nuisances, officer." Cops gave the girls back to Spector on a platter. If you keep your silver voice down, it doesn't matter what's in your hand. In Phil's case, it was a suitcase, seeping, and a sawed-off shotgun cocked in broad daylight. Balls. Sirens near, disappear. As long as there's cash and chemo, diseases will flow like springs, water bottled, poisoned, dyed hot pink, and pumped through Spector's sprinklers. And he's a mother on the mower, says good-natured LaFlora with a wink while fetching the bastard's hash and hammer. LaFauna nods behind the blindfold, holds her breath between concrete beams in the basement. And this is called Nazi art. The Nazi artist wasn't really a Nazi. He simply made art. He simply made Nazi art 60 years after the Holocaust, as if Nazis had made it. Art about Nazis that Nazis would have loved to look at in a Nazi museum. Nazi paintings of little idyllic towns flooded with goose-stepping Nazis. An intricately carved wooden Nazi hugging another intricately carved wooden Nazi. Bronze Nazi officers' caps with quotes in German praising Nazis on the brim. Everything spiraling with gold leaf swastikas. But the Nazi artist himself was not a Nazi. Nazi art and Nazis were great subjects for art, he maintained. Museums of today loved his Nazi art because it wasn't really believed, not Nazi felt. It was make-believe, a commentary on Nazis. It was funny or something, but not really. It was, ironically Nazi. Then people discovered the Nazi artist was an actual Nazi. The museum president packed his art into a giant crate marked "No Touch" and stuffed it in the dark museum basement. The curator still tiptoes past the crate, remembering a time its contents felt safe, or something. Then he feels ashamed, or something. Whatever it is, It's a real, really felt feeling.
I remember when that was in the news.
Yeah.
But it was porcelain.
Yeah. Yeah, he liked porcelain Nazi art.
Yeah. And the curators all thought it was a critique. That's the great thing about the critique. Everything can always be a critique. No, it's really Nazi. It was sincere. It was like David Foster Wallace all over again. Anyways, all right. This is related, I guess. Some people want to round up the homeless or return to the gold standard. I get it. I want to write a book about the Holocaust. But it'll be just one more book about skin and shoes. The body's always involved, but only as a decoy. Whores are incredible. It breaks my heart. This party among the statues. Sarah says, nobody shot in the head, no party. According to her, the road to joy is lined with photographs. In each photograph, Sarah is cradling a baby deer. The plague makes images of the body. The bovine outbreak was first captured on video. That's why I have to buy a new suit. It's like I have to drown myself in silk. I have to burn myself with cigarettes. I have to be beaten to death by cops. Every day is suffering. Buddhism taught me that. Life's not realistic. Art taught me that. It's not even life. The Iraq War taught me that. And so this one is about porcelain. Connection is slender. I wake up thinking about porcelain, and the sounds from that hotel room where the starlet and I made many mistakes when we depicted war bodies. My wife is almost dead from mercury poisoning and sits in the sofa counting pigs. The most burning thing in the world is a beehive. My father burned the hives when we moved because he didn't want anybody else to tend to them. He locked the bees inside, and he still smells like gasoline even though he's dead. The most famous person in the world is Hitler. I can hear a recording from the neighbor's room, but it seems slower than usual, like the tape is dragging. Sarah doesn't want to do drugs anymore, but she's very detailed in her plans for our bodies. It's like cross-stitching that goes bad. Her husband has been fucking women in the Congo as part of a film he's doing. It sounds like imagery from my Heart of Darkness. Another image from my Heart of Darkness shows a man screaming in a hut. The Americans giggle. Americans are always giggling. Americans giggle all the time because they don't hate anything except hatred. And I hate them right back.
This is the guy who'd burn the beehives. I cast the shadow of a sword over sky and sea. Police found a 69-year-old volunteer clown sodomizing a rare Siberian tiger in an earthquake-ravaged apartment. Precinct reports showed that the neighbors had complained of odd smells, sounds, lights, music, and colors coming from the man's house since the Civil War. Along with the tiger, 70 albino bearded dragons were found under the man's waterbed and a pterodactyl. All of the animals were wearing too much lipstick and prosthetic hubba-heinies. In the living room, radioactive waste had leaked through its metal containment barrel and burned a hole through all 16 floors of the building, straight through the center of the earth and out the other side. In a statement to the press, the clown denied any wrongdoing. "I are a peaceful man. We be conducting a full investigation into this matter. We have the utmost respect for animals, for lactating women, for Italian Americans, for the mentally challenged, for the dead." In lieu of an official statement, his wife preferred to let a bundt cake do the talkin'. This is called Caring for Your New Perm. I started to write a poem about giving a dog a perm. It was really about how the need to control people is as absurd as forcing an animal to be something other than it is, putting tiny high heels on a bird, and so forth. The dog wanted dreadlocks, so the speaker, a we, shaved its head. And that's where I stopped. I'm afraid for that dog, I thought, on my way down to the basement to load the wet laundry in the dryer. Suddenly, I wanted to tell you how much I love you, to apologize for the notes stuck to your bathroom mirror, the frantic green exclamation points. I was afraid for you like I was that dog. Upstairs, I erased the lines and listened to the laundry spin, heating up. Why, oh why, won't you listen to me?
Sinead asks me if cats eat bats or bats eat cats. I don't know, I reply. Go ask your mother. But her mother is busy examining a colorful coral reef floret, cutting into its soft skin with her gilded scalpel. Some neighborhood whores gave it to my wife to thank her for performing abortions in our bathroom. There's a little inscription from a song on the handle. Life imitates art. So actually, I wrote these from a lot of different places. So like this one actually does not take place at all in Los Angeles. It takes place in Malmö. Has somebody ever been to Malmö? It's a grim town, the home of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but it's a grim town. So this is pretty much a true story. Sometimes I have a bleeding heart. Sometimes I listen to the music of Los Angeles, the sound of pigs being concussed on slaughterhouse floors, the sound of teenagers with a thin layer of pubic hair over everything. And sometimes if you listen hard enough in Los Angeles, you can hear an interrogation taking place in Los Angeles, or you can hear a Capitol, or you can hear a deer get shot in the head. While poets want me to say something cute and crazy about wanting to stay in bed, I stay in bed if my wife's in bed because she has big tits. And then I go to an opening, which is a beautiful lie. It was torn down last night because the janitor thought it was trash. So it's a lie. It's also about homosexual desire and a black-on-black violence. Violence on violence, violence. Like your show, Los Angeles. Like my show, Ruins. Your show is all about like sleepwalking and shit. Like my show, your hype comes out of epilepsy and social media. We fuck with slurred mouths. I'm always singing about Mexico. Always singing about swans and radios. On the operating table with this fucked up kind of voice. When is your show taking place? Tonight at the abortion clinic. Tonight in New Jerusalem. Tonight I'll walk into a bar for authors and order a bullet in the head. When in Rome. When all else fails. Imitate the natives with dead flowers. Wake up in the middle of the night and ask for a thrashing fox.
The 10 Million Year War. We'd taken the hill at last. Our muskets flashed and set our sleeves ablaze. Luminous mercury puddles purged in our latrine could be seen from outer space and would internally endure. Praise his jerky! Load the powder muzzle! Hoist the mizzenmast! Enemies staggering at us exploded in hollow pops and rained back down upon us in a gory confetti. Know what I could go for? Bart asked suddenly, his dank, black mouth full of clouds. And in the hours of dumbstruck silence that followed, all the dogs we'd skinned came galumping happily back to us with orange croquet balls in their mouths. Aw. No, I said and meant it. Tater tots, Bart grinned. Tater tots. Tater tots. We tolled like bells and toddled around the hill until we all finally lay down. Just resting eyes a little bit. And this is cue the theme from Action Man. Who's gonna wake and bake and clean the bottom of the lick and shovel all of the snow from the yard? It's so hard to do so with the snow when it's 130 below. Action Man, he's a man of action. Action Man, he's so hyper vigilant. Who's driving with a beer between his knees and sweeping all the dog hair in a pile and wiping off countertops. He don't need a mop or a doctor who asks him personal questions. Action Man, he's a man of action. Action Man, here's his reading glasses. Who's on it like vomit and washes the germs off his hands? Who's the man who vacuums the vacuum? Action Man! Yeah, one more round, do you think?
All right, we'll do one more round. I suddenly feel lacking because I don't have any tater tots in my book.
You could just stick some in.
That's true. This one's called Tater Tots. The violence of fame makes itself known in bodies. Fame looks allegorical, but then what doesn't anymore? The contents look damaged in media. This one hot bitch has been cut like horses whose mouths are bleeding. The wig is on the pavement and it's discolored. Tonight we look at pictures of rotten fruit. Tonight someone wanted to hurt me. Spoomy fuck, they said, and they meant it. They had seen me reclining on a Chinese bed. Sarah, they had seen me in the station light. I was surrounded by 10,000 cars. We had tasers, supposedly. I call them electric swans and sell them to prostitutes. I have a long interview with one such whore. We talk about the Cold War, and my hallucinations are ridiculous. And then we talk about the girl corpses in the street, and then we talk about ambrosia and the rumors about the girl corpses. He tells me that poetry is better in the silent era. You have to be beaten to death by cops, he tells me. I tell him I don't understand. He tells me he wants to be a CEO. Of what? I ask him. Winter, he says. Ugh, I say. Fuck you, he says. Winter is the new winter. All right, so this is the last one. Oh, yeah, this one is called I Want to Keep the Camera Out. When I attempt to complicate my landscape fetish. But then I start to think about tits and the law against paying your taxes because I love the illustrations of the riots. The law is pretty clear when it comes to collapsing in public. The mobs are pretty because all my money is in foreign currencies, i.e. rat music. And I tend to faint. I tend to have these black ribbons, funeral processions. I tend to hate men's bodies. So it makes me the ideal reader of the law. I read it with conviction and I have hard-on. You can carry me through the riots with my hard-on. You can call me crime flower this autumn. You can look infected in your mouth if you let me look infected in my money. I need teenagers to look even more repulsive. I need them to eat candy in memory of my dead friend. It's like a welcome back party for a soldier who had been eating pork at that whore palace in Baghdad. Women's spit look best at sunset. Men's bodies look best when pale stuff is coming in through the cracked window in my study, where I keep my skulls and roses to demonstrate that I don't belong. I belong. I belong. Los Angeles has many dummies.
This is called Immutable. Not the ink nor the name it sculpts in waves and slashes. Not the clammy hands, nor rash on the ring finger, nor the missing tip, the stump, the hole where a nose used to be, though it shocks to hear words echoing in the skull, to see the skull can be seen into. Not what side of the war we died on or under, not the color, not the O's on each side of the L nor their holler. Not the way we'll slip out of this world, our swan songs clogging the ears of all the wordless species going first, after you. They do not define us, these skins, these sky-high piles of hides. And this is the last one for me. Ladies' night, feeling right. I was walking across a hotel lobby when I saw Tim, my ex, sitting with his mother and Gary near a fireplace in the bar. Tim and Gary had their heads bowed. "What's happening?" I asked Tim's mom. "Well, I was just telling the boys how I know Tim is gay." Tim just raised his eyes, then lowered them again. "How do you know?" I asked, even though I knew too. "Because I gave them 2 pairs of my underwear to take on vacation, and they peed on both of them," Tim's mom said. Tim shifted a bit, but Gary looked positively elated. "Well, I'll tell you how I know Tim's gay," I said. "How?" she asked. Her genuine interest made me feel good about what I knew. "Because he doesn't eat pussy, that's why," I said, and as Tim's face slid down his chin, all the people at the bar and behind the desk began to clap and cheer, and I pivoted on my heel and marched out through the double glass doors where my unicorn was waiting. And she was like, "How'd that feel?" And I was like, "Amazing."